The story kicks off on a rainy night where we see a woman with her baby trying to hide from someone. Luckily, another woman spots her and, noticing the baby, invites her into her home. However, the mother just leaves the child in her care, promising to return after buying some medicine for him. The homeowner notices the baby is wearing a walnut necklace, but by the time she turns around, the mother has vanished. Years later, the plot shifts to a little girl at a fair asking for candied fruit from Lu Shu, who turns out to be that same baby, still wearing his walnut necklace. He calls the little girl Lu Xiaoyu and explains that if she wants new clothes, they need to save up, or they won't have enough for the next semester. But since she throws a tantrum, he caves and buys it for her anyway. As they stroll through the fair, they overhear a group talking about a man who gained superhuman strength, right before Lu Xiaoyu grabs him by the arm to watch a show where a guy is spitting fire. Since our protagonist was carrying the little girl so she could see better, she gets tired, and when he puts her down, she calls him a weakling. His pride wounded, our protagonist runs to the front of the stage. But when he gets there and sees the flames, he has a strange vision of a sword and feels an energy coming from his necklace. When he snaps out of it, he's completely stunned, thinking it must be some kind of unusual power. After the show, Lu Xiaoyu asks how they did it, so she suggests going backstage to investigate. They sneak around and spot some men paying the performer, which startles Lu Xiaoyu and makes her cause a commotion. When they're discovered, our protagonist tries to play it cool, saying they were just looking for the bathroom. The men claim they're just firefighters and it was an unauthorized party. Lu Shu smiles as if he believes them, but deep down, he knows they're lying. As they're leaving, a young man named Shi Wei approaches and asks what they were doing there, but they just ignore him and walk away. As they walk away, our protagonist thinks those guys use their unusual power to take it for themselves. Just then, Lu Xiaoyu asks if they are the same kind of people, and he replies that he's taking her back to the orphanage. Without hesitation, she tells him she would just run away again to be with him. So, Lu Shu poses a question to the little girl. What would she do if there were more people with powers in the world than normal people? She answers that she'd become the strongest, and since she's sure she'll awaken an incredible power, she'll protect him in exchange for food. When they arrive, they see the lady from the beginning cooking outside. The protagonist asks about her uncle, but she says everything is the same and she's used to it. They're suddenly interrupted by Lu Xiaoyu, who calls the lady Aunt Lily and wants to try the medicine she's making. So the protagonist whisks her away, leaving the old woman thinking about how nice it is to be young. As night falls, we see Lu Xiaoyu watching the news about people gaining powers. Our protagonist walks in and says he'll make noodles for dinner, only to realize they're out and he needs to go shopping. Since Lu Xiaoyu wants instant noodles and he refuses, she threatens to break his walnut necklace. He takes off the necklace and gently taps her on the head, which makes her cry, forcing him to buy the noodles she wanted. Out on the street, he notices it's snowing, and memories of the orphanage flood back. How everyone used to bully him as a kid, and how Lu Xiaoyu was always there to protect him, until he grew up and she ran away to be by his side. Lost in thought, our protagonist steps into the street right into the path of an oncoming truck. In that very instant, he hears his mother's song as the necklace begins to glow brightly. Suddenly, he's lying on the ground, bleeding, when something appears in the sky. His necklace opens, rises into the air, and the walnut shatters, bathing his body in a brilliant light. He figures that if he doesn't feel any pain, it must be because he has some hidden power. He gets up as if nothing happened, which freaks out the truck driver, who speeds off without asking for any compensation. Later, at the store where he's buying noodles, the clerk is terrified by his appearance. That's when our protagonist realizes he's covered in blood and dashes home. When he arrives, he tells Lu Xiaoyu he was hit by a car, to which she casually asks if the car is okay. Lu Shu goes to take a shower and discovers he doesn't have a single scratch on him, just a glowing mark on his hand. Back in his room, a video game-like menu appears, floating in the air. On it, he sees the names of the people he's scared and how he earned points from it. He figures he can farm points to get prizes. A lottery wheel pops up, but he only manages to lose his points until finally he wins a purification fruit that looks like an apple. He takes a bite and a glow spreads through his body, making him feel amazing. This encourages him to keep gambling, though he ends up losing almost everything. In the end, with barely any points left, he wins a scroll. Upon reading it, he realizes it's the song his mother used to sing. He starts singing it, and a light travels directly to him, transporting him to some kind of cosmic dimension. Despite this, he keeps arguing with Lu Xiaoyu as if he was still in his room, which, oddly enough, generates more points for him through her negative emotions. Finally, as they're finishing dinner, our protagonist gets a strange feeling just as the news reports a fire, so Lu Shu decides to check it out. He climbs onto his roof and spots some men jumping between rooftops, who also see him. When they approach, he realizes they're the same guys from the fire show. He tries to run, but they corner him. The protagonist makes an excuse, saying he was just looking for nuts, and since they don't sense any special energy from him, they assume he's just a normal guy, and let him go. Back in the house, he thinks about how he can sense them, but they can't sense him. Just then, Lu Xiaoyu appears, and as he's about to tell her what happened, a man falls from the sky and lands in their garden. Lu Shu goes to see what's going on, secretly followed by Lu Xiaoyu, whose fear keeps generating points for him. When they get closer, they discover the man is the fire-breathing performer, and Lu Shu deduces he was used to start the fire. Lu Xiaoyu asks what they're going to do with him, and the protagonist, wanting to provoke him, says out loud that since they can't afford a doctor, they'll just ignore him. This generates a wave of negative feelings from the man, and Lu Shu realizes he's just pretending to be unconscious to farm more points and income. Finally, the man gets up, gets angry, and tries to burn him, but he's too weak and fails. Defeated, he asks them to let him go. Once he's gone, Lu Shu explains to Lu Xiaoyu that the guy couldn't do anything because he was weak. She uses this as a chance to mock him, saying he'll probably never awaken a superpower, and dares him to prove her wrong. Back in his room, the protagonist thinks that maybe he doesn't have powers, but he finds a mysterious item in his inventory. When he touches it, it materializes, and he eats it. A bolt of lightning teleports him back to the universe, where he feels an immense power growing inside him. When he awakens, he realizes he's much stronger. He walks out to the living room, and Lu Xiaoyu teases him because his friends got together without him. But he reminds her he doesn't have money for that stuff. Still, he starts chatting with his group and provokes them to make them angry and earn more points. Lu Xiaoyu, seeing this, tells him to go sell eggs to make some money. The next day, we see Lu Shu selling eggs while the other merchants ask about his sister. He lies, saying she has the flu. Later, he sees his classmates ignoring or making fun of him. But he turns the tables by telling them this job will pay for college, which infuriates them and gives him more points. Just as they're about to bother him again, a girl shows up, offers to lend him money, and leaves, humiliating them. Back in class, a classmate is talking about a viral video of the arsonist. Lu Shu ignores her, pretending not to have internet and commenting on the power level someone like that must have, which annoys his classmates. Suddenly, another student bursts in, saying something terrible happened in the next classroom. When they get there, they see the room is a mess. Lu Shu senses a negative energy and learns that a student argued with a teacher and threw a desk at him with incredible force. As he was leaving, he sees another desk fall from the roof. Thinking the culprit is on the terrace, he runs off, but the same girl from before appears in his path again. On the terrace, the scene is tense. A student is holding a teacher by the collar, threatening to throw him over the edge. Lu Shu arrives and tries to reason with him. He finally tells him that if he goes through with it, he'll face a mountain of criminal charges. This distraction gives the other teachers a chance to intervene, rescue their colleague, and subdue the student. For his trouble, Lu Shu earns a massive amount of points. Later, back in the classroom, he sees several people in face masks starting to take blood samples from everyone. After school, he runs into Shi Wei, who's talking to his aunt, warning her not to go out or open the door to strangers. Shi Wei tries to greet Lu Shu, but once again, he gets completely ignored. That afternoon, he gets home to find Lu Xiaoyu sick with the flu. Lu Shu figures his magic lottery wheel might help. After a few spins, he gets a cherry and gives it to Lu Xiaoyu, who recovers instantly. He tries to get more, but the girl thinks he's making fun of her. Despite that, Lu Shu gives her all the fruit he won and tells her not to worry. As Lu Xiaoyu eats, he tells her she needs to study and do her homework so she doesn't become a useless bum, which, of course, earns him a nice chunk of points. The next day in class, his classmates are complaining about how unfair it is that the problem student only got a light punishment. They plan to protest by not taking their final exams, demanding equal treatment for all. In the midst of this, they glance at Lu Shu, who's sleeping peacefully despite being a top student. Suddenly, hooded men appear and announce they'll be giving special classes to students with abilities, asking them to come to the front. In another scene, we see an incredibly agile and strong old man. A hooded figure appears before him, stating he's there for his last descendant. The old man, trying to prevent this, sends several powerful individuals to stop the figure, but they fail. Back at the school, more hooded men in black appear carrying a box. Just then, they introduce a new female student, but the newcomer clarifies that he's actually a boy. Lu Shu's deskmate, annoyed with him, declares she no longer wants to sit next to him and would rather sit with the new girl. This new student introduces himself to Lu Shu as Zhang Shuyi, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. Lu Shu, in his typical fashion, just asks him awkward questions to earn points. That night, Lu Shu and the other selected students gather in a building. The hooded man from before informs them they're there to learn about cultivation. He asks Lu Shu what knack is, catching him off guard. The protagonist uses the moment to play dumb and earn some points. The hooded man then explains that knack is a liquid that determines a person's quality. Another student chimes in, saying it's energy from the earth. The master continues, explaining that quality is linked to blood and its color varies for each individual, allowing them to identify who has powers. After class, a group of students hassles Lu Shu, claiming his blood will surely be the lowest level possible. Later, at home, while Lu Xiaoyu is eating, Lu Shu eats one of the cherries to get stronger. Suddenly, a system screen pops up, notifying him that his purification has maxed out, unlocking stinky tofu, which he feeds to the girl. Despite trying several times, the lottery wheel keeps giving him more and more stinky tofu instead of the nuts he wants. Finally, he gets a card that flies out and hits the girl, causing time to freeze and a hole of clouds to rip open in the sky. Lu Xiaoyu is lifted into space, floating as a black light emanates from her. Later, Lu Shu gets an idea on how to make money with all that tofu. The next day, he runs into a man who offers to be his master, but he turns him down and continues on his way. In the town square, Lu Shu manages to sell all his stinky tofu and then heads to school. His daily routine becomes selling tofu and being a good student. One day, at home, a walnut appears, which he eats, teleporting him to a parallel universe. There, he realizes a power is flowing from his body, though he doesn't yet know what it is. Out of nowhere, a glowing purple sword materializes, which he masters with surprising ease. Back in reality, he discovers he can summon the sword there too, though the process leaves him exhausted. He knows that if he masters it, he'll become an expert. The next day at school, his classmates are talking about people called the Awakened, info they got from an official forum. Jiang Shui tells our protagonist that 3 of these Awakened teamed up to rob the central bank. At that moment, another classmate interrupts, saying they should band together to defend themselves against them. The classmate tells Lu Shu that even though his quality is low, he could still help and even charge for it. Lu Shu retorts that he must be a very unhappy person to say such things. That same night, in cultivation class, Jiang Shui secretly tells Lu Shu that the master has a special rock that enhances cultivation. Apparently, once they finish the course, both the rock and the professor will help them strengthen their qualities. Meanwhile, in class, another classmate receives his special rock, and the master explains they will have to cultivate their own and submit a report. He's about to teach them how to create a bond with the stone to fuse with it and multiply their strength tenfold. Back at home, the protagonist tries to connect his rock with his sword, but it doesn't work, making him think the method is flawed. The next day, leaving his house, he again sees Mr. Li Xianyi practicing. The old man notices him, but by the time he's about to offer to teach him, Lu Shu is already gone. At school, he asks Jiang Shui how to cultivate the rock. He replies that it took him 2 hours of total concentration and advises him to focus on his own bodily power. Lu Shu is surprised by how much his friend knows, but when he sees everyone staring at them, Jiang Shui gets embarrassed and walks away. During class, one of the cultivation students beats another in a strength contest, claiming it's his natural strength and not because he's one of the Awakened. He then challenges Lu Shu. Lu Shu beats him effortlessly and mocks him, saying that thanks to the effort, he awakened his power, which makes everyone leave in a huff. That same day at lunch, Lu Shu is eating his stinky tofu when Jiang Shuyi approaches him, saying he heard a rumor that he's one of the Awakened. Lu Shu jokes about it, claiming he awakened thanks to the arm wrestle he won that morning. Jiang Shui suggests he tell the professor, as it could help with his stone cultivation. However, our protagonist speculates that the professor might work for a secret department, but his friend dismisses the idea, insisting the professor only wants them to reach their full potential. This makes Lu Shu suspect the whole thing could be a trap to capture the Awakened. That night, from his house, Lu Shu senses a group of hooded figures approaching his neighborhood, heading straight for the home of the swordmaster, Li Xianyi. One of them introduces himself as Tianluo. Li Xianyi apologizes for not being able to receive him, but Tianluo forces his way in and helps himself to a drink. He tells Li Xianyi that he needs him to join his group as wars have begun and he is the last of the successors. Li Xianyi refuses, arguing they won't be able to control any country and will be easily defeated. Tianluo leaves, telling him he hopes they aren't enemies the next time they meet. As he exits, he sees Lu Shu in his window, but pays him no mind. Lu Xiaoyu asks Lu Shu who that man was, and he replies that he's a very powerful B-level warrior. The next day, he sees Mr. Li Xianyi training with his sword. He approaches and says he wants to learn, admitting he finds it difficult. The master assures him he can help with any problems he has. She gets angry and leaves, but he tells the girl that from now on, he will spend his afternoons at Li Xianyi's house to practice with the sword, leaving both of them surprised. Later, at school, Jiang Shui tells him that 3 awakened individuals have teamed up to commit crimes, while Lu Shu receives 3 notifications for an enormous amount of earned points. At the end of class, he hears that his classmate Cao Qingqi has already mastered her stones and has an excellent cultivation, being the first in class to do so. On his way home, Lu Shu finds Lu Xiaoyu arguing with Mr. Li Xianyi over a math problem. Lu Shu steps in and tells his sister that in the future, Mr. Li Xianyi can help her with her homework. Then, the master tells him he should start training with weights, but Lu Shu insists he'd rather master the cultivation connection with his rock. Li Xianyi tells him about someone who managed to master that technique and explains that he needs to control the sword to connect with his cultivation. Lu Shu picks up one of the heavy stones and, to his surprise, it feels very light. He confesses to Li Xianyi that he has already awakened his strength. The master then picks up a leaf that bursts into blue flames, uses it like a sword to cut a wall, and tells him he still has much to learn. He hands him a sword and asks him to demonstrate his moves. Thus, his training begins and the protagonist completes every single one. That night, Mr. Li Xianyi tells him that the most powerful person is the one willing to take on the greatest responsibility. However, Lu Shu replies that he won't accept that burden, as he has other priorities. The next day, while the aunt and Li Xianyi are teaching him math, a man named Shi Jin pays them a visit. At that moment, Lu Shu senses a signal that someone is approaching the master and the girl, so he runs out of class. When he arrives, he finds Shi Jin proposing to Li Xianyi that he join his group, but the master flatly refuses. After that, Li Xianyi shows Lu Shu a new path, telling him that this will be his next lesson. Back at home, Lu Shu's quality changes to black, leading him to believe he has reached the highest level. Upon leaving, he runs into Li Xianyi, who confirms that he is at his peak. Later we see Lu Shu in a trance-like state, advancing to the next phase and acquiring the power of regeneration. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaoyu dreams she's being thrown into a black hole and, upon waking, claims to have surpassed the stellar level. Curiously, she asks Lu Shu about his special power, and she reveals that she can summon dead animals to do her bidding. She demonstrates with an ant and a bird. Lu Shu suspects this power came from the scroll that opened that day. She tells him she wants to practice with larger animals, so he takes her to a pig farm, which makes her angry, thinking he's messing with her. Back at home, Lu Xiaoyu summons the pig they saw. Lu Shu attacks it to see if it's real, and seeing it bleed like a normal animal, he summons his sword and eliminates it, leveling up in the process, though Lu Xiaoyu ends up annoyed. That night, the news reports more deaths linked to the awakened. Suddenly, Lu Shu has a vision of a man being attacked, and they both decide to go see if they can help. The scene shifts, and we see the group of hooded figures fighting the awakened who possess superpowers. The awakened managed to escape thanks to the arrival of the police, as the hooded figures couldn't defeat them. Lu Shu tells Lu Xiaoyu to go back home, and although she insists on staying, she eventually leaves. Lu Shu connects the dots and discovers that the hooded figures, who call themselves the Heavenly Network, raided a house where the awakened were meeting. A police officer tries to enter but is attacked by the awakened. A member of the Heavenly Network intervenes to save him but is also attacked. When the smoke clears, Lu Shu appears. They try to capture him but fail. Meanwhile, in another fight, a group is attacking an extremely strong awakened but can't even scratch him. In the end, this powerful awakened comes face to face with Lu Shu. He activates his power field, draws his sword, and defeats him in a single blow, then quickly escapes. Upon arriving home, he deactivates his force field, and Lu Xiaoyu is surprised to see he's unharmed. They decide to go out to eat and run into Mr. Li Xianyi. Once on the rooftops, Lu Shu tells Lu Xiaoyu to activate her spy sparrow to warn him of any trouble, while he reviews the details of the previous fight on his system's menu. He then asks Lu Xiaoyu if she can see the dead and where they go, but the girl's power isn't strong enough for that. Frustrated, Lu Xiaoyu tells him to take her to eat. At the restaurant, Lu Shu warns her never to show her powers to anyone. He also comments that her life would have been better if she had stayed at the orphanage, which makes her cry, thinking he's going to abandon her. He comforts her and promises to do everything he can to buy a house so they never have to worry again. The next day, a man discusses the fight, wondering who the mysterious young man who managed to defeat the awakened was. We see the entire Heavenly Network in a meeting, with orders to find this character, as he single-handedly defeated all the members present at the battle. The scene shifts back to Lu Shu's stall, where he's selling his stinky tofu, causing long lines of customers who are furious about the wait, which earns him more points. When he runs out, a man asks for more, but when he refuses, the customer gets angry, giving him even more points. That night, a man takes his savings and leaves his house. Lu Xiaoyu wakes Lu Shu up to show him that she can recreate the image of the man who attacked him. Using her powers, she sees the thief's memories and discovers where he hid the money. Lu Shu insists they must return it to the police, but Lu Xiaoyu argues that with that money, they could buy their house and not go back to the orphanage. He tells her that's not the right way, and she, resigned, goes to sleep. The next morning, his classmates are whispering about the fight between the awakened and the heavenly network. Lu Shu shows up and tells them to stop wasting time. His friend Jiang Shuyi remarks that he doesn't seem to get along with anyone. Lu Shu asks him what the Blessed Land is, and he explains it's a place where powers and qualities are cultivated, useful for practitioners, although they can also use the spiritual stones distributed by the heavenly network. We see another scene of the heavenly network fighting more of the awakened. Back at school, there's a meeting to introduce the new director. Lu Shu sees an old man leaving the building who meets with Li Yixiao, the new director. Li Yixiao mentions that someone reported the location of the stolen money and asks him to keep it a secret. Upon entering, Li Yixiao refuses to go on stage because he wants to go retrieve his money, but he eventually gives in and introduces himself to the students. It turns out this new director is in charge of the special training group, which Lu Shu belongs to. After class, Lu Shu asks Jiang Shuyi the price of spiritual stones. His friend offers to help him sell his on the black market, and Lu Shu gives it to him. On his way home, he daydreams about how happy Lu Xiaoyu will be when he tells her they can buy the house. When he arrives, he finds her studying with Mr. Li Xianyi and the aunt, while someone spies on them from the shadows. Later, the director, who turns out to be friends with the spies, tells them that some attackers tried to infiltrate, but only their skeletons were found. At that moment, Mr. Li Xianyi appears, declaring that no one will touch the city's ruins. When he's told about a person with a sword who has been attacking people, he asserts it's not one of his own. Upon arriving home, Lu Shu gives Lu Xiaoyu an envelope and a phone so they can communicate. Then he drops the big news: they can buy the house. She is so shocked that she bursts into tears of joy. In his room, he feels a new power growing within him, while a dark shadow looms in Lu Xiaoyu's room. The next day, Lu Shu is at his tofu stall. When someone asks about it, he says it's not for sale, just for display. But when he realizes it's the director, he agrees to sell him some. The director recognizes him as one of his students. Another merchant comments that Lu Shu is an average student who works hard to care for his little sister. Moved, the director offers him a very low price, but Lu Shu refuses, saying it's not an honest way to do business. In the afternoon, he gets a call from a classmate telling him a bus leaves at 7. He sends a message to Lu Xiaoyu so she won't worry. On the bus, they're told they're going to some ruins, but only as a field exercise, without actually entering. One of his female classmates gets excited, believing it's a sacred place where the great masters were trained. Upon arriving at the camp, they're told their mission is to uncover the information hidden in these places. Shortly after, his classmate Li makes fun of Lu Shu's poverty. Just then, a man looks for an empty seat, and because Li doesn't get up, Lu Shu slaps him back into his place. When the group leader asks who was responsible, nobody says a word, and they carry the unconscious guy away. When asked why he did it, Lu Shu simply replies that he was being very annoying. Changing the subject, everyone comments that they can feel the energy emanating from the ruins. Later, Lu Shu leaves his tent intending to practice and sees a man staring at the mountains. He realizes he no longer needs to sing to activate his power, so he goes back into the tent and starts annoying Li to get more points out of him. The next day, he checks his earnings and sees he's leveled up, but has no signal to tell Lu Xiaoyu. At mealtime, he's served a double portion and offered a preferential seat, surprising everyone. However, he turns it down and prefers to sit with his friend. His new goal becomes pestering Li to get more coins, but Li manages to escape by running to the top of the mountain. Lu Shu pursues him, and that's how he spends his day. The next day, he practices his new power behind a container to get stronger. Later, everyone gives Lu Shu priority in the food line, but Li appears out of nowhere, looking for a rematch. The supervisor interrupts them and says if they're going to fight, it should be official. Thus begins the showdown between Li and Lu Shu, where Lu Shu wins again. He then competes against the supervisor and also comes out victorious. Suddenly, a strange fog rolls over the ruins, and although they try to escape, it's too fast. Lu Shu is enveloped by the fog and falls into the ruins without realizing it. As soon as he lands, a skeleton throws axes at him, but he defends himself with ease. Even after he splits it in two, the skeleton keeps moving, forcing him to cut off its head. Lu Shu gazes at the enormous ruins as an army of the dead rises from the sky. Fortunately, they're slow. However, shortly after, he sees a group of much faster zombies attacking his classmates. Without hesitation, Lu Shu intervenes and takes down every single one before they can kill anyone else. He tells the survivors they need to keep moving because the place isn't safe. Many ask him to stay, but he insists he must go help others and continues on his way alone. On his journey, he faces more axe-wielding zombies, defeating them one by one. He thinks he needs to find shelter as it's getting late, but he finds nothing but corpses everywhere. Suddenly, he sees a flare in the sky. He shoots it down and finds a man who had launched it, following the Heavenly Network's emergency protocol. Lu Shu, true to his style, decides to use the situation to get more points, so he lies about his name, saying he's Liu Li. When the boy asks to see his sword, Lu Shu first agrees and then says no, just to mess with him. The young man wants to find a way out, but our protagonist sticks to him, planning to annoy him further, suspecting he might be a spy. The boy, who is very fast, tries to wear Lu Shu out, but fails. Suddenly, they hear zombies, and both take off running, with Lu Shu tricking the boy over and over along the way. This infuriates the young man to the point of wanting to attack him, but when they reach a safe spot, Lu Shu announces he's going to sleep and that it's his turn to watch. He pretends to fall asleep instantly, gaining points from the boy's every frustrated expression. The moment the young man tries to steal his sword, Lu Shu opens his eyes and says, "I'm done sleeping," which shocks him and earns Lu Shu even more points. The next day, starving, Lu Shu says he's going to the bathroom, but he actually uses his system to get some tofu and eats it in secret. Then, he decides to surprise the boy by explaining the origins of tofu, and they start listing all the other foods he could have brought instead. This drives the young man crazy, and he attacks, but Lu Shu easily counterattacks and defeats him. Deeper in the forest, he finds an apple tree and decides to steal some fruit, but is attacked by protective squirrels. He manages to grab the apples and escape anyway. Back in the desert, he drinks from a well and rests, realizing how long the journey is. Just as he's about to leave, a pack of wolves attacks, injuring his arm. He heals himself by eating a fruit from his lottery and keeps running. To distract them, he throws his shoes and runs even faster until he finds a group of students. Seeing him arrive alone, they assume he must be incredibly powerful. He simply tells them he'll rest for the night and be on his way. Then, he starts eating an apple in front of everyone without sharing, which, of course, earns him more points. The group plans a mutiny to take his apples, but their fear gets the better of them, and they drop their axe. Lu Shu picks it up and continues on his way. Out of nowhere, he's attacked by a skull on horseback wielding an axe. Seeing more riders approach, he pushes the first one off his horse, steals his spear, and makes a run for it as the other skeleton riders shoot arrows at him unsuccessfully, until they finally give up and leave. Meanwhile, a group of survivors from the camp sees the riders pass by. They notice the leader is missing a spear and think they can steal from them, so they shoot him with a sniper rifle. Big mistake. They realize they are expert archers who immediately counterattack, forcing them to flee and realize they killed the wrong rider. Shortly after, they watch from a distance as Lu Shu attacks another rider and manages to take him down with his arrows. They're impressed and assume he must be from an elite class. Exhausted, Lu Shu climbs a tree and remembers playing hide-and-seek at the orphanage. Back in the present, he figures he can trade the spears he collects for magic stones. At that moment, he realizes he's surrounded by riders. Full of confidence, he takes them on and annihilates every single one. Meanwhile, back at home, Lu Xiaoyu looks for a snack, finds some potato chips, but decides to save them and wait for the protagonist to return. Back in the ruins, a group of teachers and students is searching for Lu Shu's tracks, but finds nothing. They think they need him to join them to stand a chance against the zombies. Suddenly, they see the dead riders and their horses chasing someone, so they devise a plan to find him. Meanwhile, Lu Shu climbs a hill to concentrate and practice. There, he finds a flower that enhances his power and regenerates him. On the other side, the search party continues exploring when they see the riders heading towards the horizon. Out of nowhere, they witness a rain of spears falling upon them, wiping them all out. It turns out to be Lu Shu, annihilating them to take their spears and make some money. When the students and teachers approach him, he makes it clear that all the weapons are his. He starts pulling the spears from the heads of the fallen riders. They ask if he is Lu Shu, and he confirms it, but insists they don't touch his spears. They argue that he can't possibly use them all, so Lu Shu decides to start selling them. Since no one has money, he ends up bartering. He resumes his journey, singing a song. Suddenly, the air turns freezing cold. Lu Shu asks the group leader if there were many casualties, and he replies that only network members died, almost no students. They decide to make camp, and Lu Shu hands out apple slices to quench their hunger and thirst. A man approaches and trades him a watch for 3 apples for his group. At that moment, a blast of icy air extinguishes the campfires. Evil spirits approach them, causing Lu Shu's inner sword to yearn for a fight. When a ghost is about to attack, it sees Lu Shu, who takes on a monstrous appearance and flees in terror along with the others. After that incident, they reach the heart of the ruins, where they encounter another group of survivors who claim to have been helped by a female classmate. Lu Shu seizes the opportunity to sell his spears, passing them off as training spears. He and his classmate, Cao Qingqi, are chosen as the top students to assist the Heavenly Network. Near a mysterious circle, one of the members launches a sword from his chest to scout a deep cave, confirming there's something down there, but they must wait. Lu Shu checks his menu and sees there are about 9 spies in the group, but he isn't concerned. Suddenly, an explosion takes down a tree and the director appears, announcing that all the other classmates have been sacrificed. Among the survivors is his friend Jiang Shuyi, who is relieved to see him. Lu Shu gives him a spear. A man approaches and asks for a spear on credit, but Lu Shu refuses, saying he has no collateral, thus exposing him as a spy. After this, the director announces that the next day they will descend into the hole to unleash their full strength. That night, while most are asleep, several spies jump into the hole. Lu Shu manages to stop one and offers him a deal, a 70-30 split of whatever he finds. The spy refuses and attacks him, but Lu Shu is too strong, and the commotion wakes everyone up. The director intervenes and decides they must enter the hole that very night to find that eye and secure it. He forms 2 teams, one will descend with him, and the other will stay behind to protect the rest. With the troops ready and final instructions given, the director approaches Lu Shu and, noticing he has many watches, asks if he can borrow one. Lu Shu replies that they should do business, offering him protection and wisdom in exchange for a few watches. The director gets annoyed, but then realizes the protagonist has enough money and no need to risk his life in the hole. So, he proposes a 50-50 split of whatever they find. One of the Heavenly Network members. Except for the leader, since if he disappears, the ruins will collapse on them. As the director and the enemy leader begin their duel, the students and teachers charge into battle. Lu Shu starts taking down enemies, but doesn't see an arrow heading straight for him. Luckily, his female classmate saves him at the last second. The fight rages on, and since no one dares to get near him, he uses the opportunity to slip into a nearby mansion to look for valuables. Inside, Lu Shu uses his power and gets a vision of how furious Lu Xiaoyu is. Suddenly, the spy's ghost appears behind him to attack. But, almost instinctively, Lu Shu's sword flies out to defend him, killing the ghost and sending it flying, earning him more points in the process. After that, Lu Shu explores the mansion room by room until he finds an armory of spears and decides to take them. But suddenly, all the terracotta soldiers in the room come to life and attack him. He draws his sword and with a single display of his power, makes them all retreat to their original positions. Fueled by his anger, he takes their spears to earn more coins. Meanwhile, in the main battle, his classmate Cao Qingqi is helping defeat hordes of zombies. The director, though losing to the final boss, manages to trick him and obtain the Spear of Power, but the boss remains a formidable opponent. Suddenly, he finds a puzzle. The boss senses it, abandons the fight, and rushes towards his mansion. The director tries to follow, but the now unarmed guards stop him. Inside, the boss finds Lu Shu holding the seal of the river of the ruins. He drops it, but in a swift move, grabs it again, and the seal merges with his body. This causes the entire place, including the boss and all other enemies, to begin to vanish, leaving only Lu Shu, who is teleported back to the initial campsite. Everything returns to normal, with all the students and teachers alive and well. Afterward, we see Jiang Shuyi searching everywhere for Lu Shu without success. The director speaks with the head of the Heavenly Network, speculating that a spy stole the seal. Suddenly, while taking roll call, they realize Lu Shu is missing. Just then, he appears, safe and sound, telling the professor he has a family emergency. On his way home, he receives notifications of hatred from Lu Xiaoyu. He sees potato chip wrappers on the ground, looks up, and finds her in a tree. Upon seeing that he's okay, she bursts into tears, and he tells her it's time to go home. On their way home, Lu Shu shows Lu Xiaoyu all the money he made and promises to take her out to eat, managing to bring a smile to her face. At home, the aunt and the others are waiting, relieved that they've returned safely, including Mr. Li Xianyi, who was watching over them. At the house, 2 spheres appear, one dark and one light. The dark one is for nourishing the body and soul, while the light one grants the strength to defeat enemies. Lu Shu gives the black sphere to an illusion Lu Xiaoyu had created. In return, he gives her the apples he picked, and as she eats, the squirrel from the ruins appears, complaining about its fruits. Lu Xiaoyu gives it a name, feeds it, and the squirrel becomes obedient. Back in his room, Lu Shu looks at the seal again and is spiritually transported to the top of the sky, from where he can see the entire city. He realizes he can control the energy that emanated from the place. When he transports to another location, he sees the spears and a door that contains the entire absorbed mansion. Suddenly, the girl wakes him up, terrified, thinking something bad had happened to him. Lu Shu assures her that their lives are going to change and that he'll use the money he has for the house. Elsewhere, the leader of the Heavenly Network still believes a spy has the seal and orders an investigation into why it hasn't been activated. Another member at the meeting adds that they will be on alert for any unusual energy and will modify the special classes' training to prepare them for greater dangers, as the world is changing forever. Outside, they watch the fireworks and finally go back inside the house. But well, if you've made it this far, comment the word Daisuki to let me know you've reached the end. Here on the screen, I leave you with these 2 cool videos, just like the person watching this video. See you next time. Take care, drink water, take a shower, and bye.